Okay, so I just want to say quickly, these videos, I plan to make them a little bit shorter than the previous ones because those ones were take a very long time to upload. And I just want to say that I discussed a lot of things with my grandpa before, stuff about, I'll just give one example. I would read him fairy tales, and he had these amazing insights. Pinocchio represents this, or maybe the flow, but these ideas that would emerge from the reading of it just come to him, and I had a lot of great ideas with that, but a lot of those I didn't record. Um, like I said, I recorded a lot of stuff on audio, but so, but just going back, just today, I asked my grandpa about this Hindu myth where there's a horse and the horse would walk around, and wherever the horse would walk, the king who owned the horse, that king would take over that territory. So the horse would walk around for 2 years. Wherever the horse would walk, servants would follow the horse. They would map out everywhere that the horse walked, and then the king would take over those spots. What I just heard about this myth, and I just asked my grandpa about that myth today. What does that represent, Grandpa?
Well, I don't know the myth, but it sounds like what it represents is a mythological articulation of a growing awareness that there is an order we depend on that goes beyond our own understanding and our own impulses and desires, and that we're guided by something beyond ourselves. There is a guiding principle, or what's been called an order we depend on, and we need to get in touch with that. And this whole mythology about the horse sounds like what they're saying is this is one way of not depending on your own devices, your own homemade plans of protection and promotion, but relying upon something that's beyond um, your own ego's creations.
And that's what the horse represents. The horse is the one that's determining where you're going to go, where you're going to
Right,
conquer. It's not your determination.
right. So you're following a path other than the one you've designed for yourself.
And to me, that seems a lot like the flow. But before I continue with that, I just want to say that I would listen, I would read myths to my grandpa, stuff like this all the time, and he would have these amazing insights about them. And it's stuff, when I read the myth, nothing came to my mind. I'm thinking, what does this represent? A horse walking around? But then I asked my grandpa, what does this mean? And he has this insight. He had this insight right here. But I would do that with all types of myths and all types of stories. And he had these, because probably through all the research he's done, and also probably just through his intuition, maybe, who knows why it's so enriched, but he had the capacity to view things in ways that a lot of people won't see it. It sees a deeper meaning behind it. But any other thoughts on that, Grandpa?
Yeah, well, that's the way I've been trained and encouraged to understand. For example, the Bible, that so much of it is mythological, or what I call poetic, rather than to get involved in the whole controversy of saying Bible stories are mythological. They're poetic, and they're poetic because they're attempting to point to a reality that goes beyond the reach of mere prose, of mere just intellectual um, explanations. So that's the essence, as I understand it, of what the Bible message is all about. You have to look beyond the immediate appearance, beyond the literal interpretation, in order to fully benefit from the many things that are recorded in the Bible.
So anything else you want to say?
No,
So as I was saying, I would do that with just not just like these Hindu myths, but all types of myths in the Bible, but other myths and different stories. And somehow, I guess probably because you did a lot of practice. Originally, when you obviously you weren't able to see these connections and stuff, but through all the practice and everything, I would ask about this myth, this myth. He could see something deeper beyond just the surface level.
yeah, well, that's like, for example, one of the stories I remember so much talking about is Jack and the Beanstalk. See, Jack and the Beanstalk was willing to let go of his own homemade and his mom's homemade plans of protection and promotion, and that whole story illustrates when you're willing to let go of what you're hanging on to and step out and explore more, there's riches available.
So in terms of Jack and the Beanstalk, like I said, I would read these stories of my grandpa. He could see not just Jack and the Beanstalk. I'm talking Cinderella. I'm talking every story that I could read. He saw some Pinocchio, everything. There's a deeper meaning. But in terms of there was, he interpreted a deeper meaning. But in terms of Jack and the Beanstalk, what did that represent? He drops the beans. They build up a stalk. He climbs up. There's a giant there. He comes back down. Is this just a hero's journey? We talk about Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, but what is the deeper meaning behind all this?
Yeah, he's willing to take the journey. He's willing to go beyond, like the story that's now on television, Game of Thrones. He's willing to go outside the wall, even though people are saying it'll kill you and it'll destroy you, and there are all kinds of monsters out there. That's what the whole giant represents. There are dangers out there, and but if you're willing to explore and let go and have an expectancy for something more, then the riches are available to you. That's a common theme among many of these old fairy tales that have become so popular and remain so popular over the centuries, whether it's Cinderella or, well, I can't think of all of them now, but they all tend to represent in some way that same basic theme, that there is something available, but it's not available to the casual participant. You got to be willing to step out.
So he went on the hero's quest, Jack did.
And he came back enriched.
Could you discuss what the hero's journey is, Grandpa? Joseph Campbell talked about it.
Well, that's a long story, but basically it's just what we were talking about with Jack and the Beanstalk. That's a mythological representation of the same thing that Joseph Campbell is saying is in all of the more classical myths, the Greek, etc., classical myths. They're attempting to articulate the same idea that you can't reach your full potential if you settle for your homemade plans of protection and promotion.
This is reminding me. It's kind of funny because it's reminding me of that movie that you talked about before, The Last Temptation of Christ, and domesticity and contentedness.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to discuss what this means? What was Christ's last temptation? And this will be the last question for this one, and then we'll move on to another one. Hopefully.
Oh yeah, that one doesn't come to me right away. But see, the last temptation is to settle down for this homemade plan of protection, which is what we call domesticity. It's saying that the ultimate achievement in life is to make a life for yourself, get into a supportive relationship, have family and friends, and accumulate enough wealth that it'll last, and hopefully you'll be able to die before you go broke. That's the whole idea of domesticity, and that's the last temptation. When you're willing to let go of that temptation, then that's the hero's journey.
So when we're talking about The Last Temptation, the people don't know that what I'm referring to is a movie. There's a movie where Jesus is put on the cross, and it was kind of a controversial movie, but he has his temptation. I guess it was an angel or something tells him, hey, you can get off the cross and you can marry, maybe it was Mary, and you can live a contented, happy life, domestic life, and live happily ever after. And then Jesus is like, oh, really? And he goes ahead and he does that. But then at the end of the movie, Judas goes up to him and he's like, Jesus, that angel, it was actually Satan who told you that. And then Jesus goes to the cross and he's, crying, and he's like, let me go back. And then it flashes back to the cross, and then he follows through with the crucifixion. But the temptation was that he doesn't have to go on the cross. He doesn't maybe have to go on the hero's journey. He doesn't have to go through all that, and he can just live contented, just normal, peaceful life. But that was Satan's temptation.
Yeah, you can live inside the wall. You can be king of the throne inside in this Game of Thrones. See, that's what the Game of Thrones is, a very profound myth, because it represents that whole idea that this whole interpersonal world in which we all live for a period of our life is just a game, and that we can break out of that, but we can't break out of it unless we're willing to die to what we consider to be reality.
So what do you mean that it's just a game? And this will be the last question with this, and we move on to another video because it's taking a bit. So it's just a game, and we're talking about, it's all about, Game of Thrones is all about superior, inferior. There's a lot of incest going on. It's just like a lot of interpersonal, I'm the man, top dog, underdog, predator, prey. This is a dualistic conscious world. But you're saying that beyond the wall, there's something beyond this dualistic, interpersonal drama, soap opera.
There you go. That's exactly it. And no matter how hard you try to make it work, it always leaves you empty.
So, but like my friend Rohan, he's saying, so what? There's something beyond it. So what? This is all that there is. Superior, inferior, doing it. What's beyond this? And then the question would be, so what? Why not just be a king, take your kingdom, get as many women as possible, superior, inferior, kill your enemies, predator, prey, do the best you can in this world. Just go all out.
And then
I'm the man.
And then die, because that's all there is. So, who knows? Maybe they're right. But then again.
But what you're saying is, you see a lot of religious people will say, no, don't do that because that's the devil, and you're going to go to hell because you're going to be really rich in this world, but in the next world you're going to go to hell. So it's kind of like a trick. It's what Nietzsche talks about. We'll talk about Nietzsche. So then they think, okay, so what we'll do is we'll be really inferior, and it's super ego based. We'll be really inferior in this world, and we'll let people walk all over us, and we'll be the peasants. But in the next world, we'll have the afterlife. So this is their strategy for.
We'll get a reward. That's their homemade plan of salvation.
So that's still within the wall. That's still ego oriented. They're still in the wall,
right,
and they're still playing the game.
Right.
But they're just taking the lower position within the same dualistic mindset. But you're saying that there's the flow, which is outside of the wall.
Right.
But it's really scary because there's monsters outside the wall, right? Or is there?
Well, you have to be prepared to go outside the wall. No one storms the gates of heaven. You need to go through that strengthening process in order to be able to cope with life outside the wall.
Any other thoughts of that, Grandpa?
No.
So stop with this video right here, and then hopefully start up another video in a second. Was that good, Grandpa?
How long did that last?
13 minutes.
Do you know how long the other ones were?
20 minutes.
Oh.
So you think that was good, Grandpa?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because people normally won't sit much longer. That's the reason why TED Talks